what is happening? I hope you're doing mega fantastic. It's February, it is the month of love, and we are going to be tackling a month of love painting today. So, little backstory, I am like the hugest fan of love and spreading joy and spreading happiness. It's totally like my main jam. It's what I try to strive for most in my life. But I've never been particularly a big fan of Valentine's Day because I feel like it's just like love should be shown every single day. I feel like it shouldn't be reserved for one day. I feel like every day should be special. And if you have a special person in your life, they shouldn't just be showing it one day. It should be on a very consistent basis. And Valentine's Day always kind of sat weird with me for that reason. And then especially when those times when you don't have somebody that is particularly like in your life that is showing love to you. The cool thing is that we can always show love to ourselves. And one way that I've always done that for myself is through painting. So painting just really brings me back to my heart center. It makes me feel so good. And it's just one of those ways that I have it for myself. It's just my time. And I feel like that's really what Valentine's should be about. It should just be about spreading the love and joy. Am I right? Cool. Now, I went digging in my archive of paintings. I didn't really know what I wanted to do this month. And literally, I just went over there and I pulled this painting. It was the first one that I pulled out. I have them all kind of sectioned and seasoned. And I realized I have never taught this painting. It's something that I made when I first started teaching painting. And I never really took the opportunity to bring it to people and to show how it's done. Now, I can't really take credit for this painting. It's definitely something that I saw on the internet. And when I was first starting out, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of like copying and figuring out where my style was. And that's what's so wonderful about, finding things that you really like and trying to replicate them, even if they don't turn out exactly like the original painting. It's always kind of nice to do stuff like that. And you really do figure out your own style. You figure out, how you hold your brush and how you would do it differently, and that it doesn't have to be exactly the same all the time. And I really love embracing that because I really feel like everybody can paint. As long as you like what you're doing, that's all that matters. Whatever happens on the canvas happens on the canvas, but whatever is happening on the inside and in your heart while you're painting, that's the good stuff. That's the juice that we're really looking for, right? So what a great opportunity to retry this painting after so many years, bring it to you guys, and I can't wait to see your version of it. Now, if for some reason the person who made the painting like this in the first place, please feel free to tag them. It is a huge honor to be able to like something and then test it out. I just don't want to claim it as my own for this particular party. So that's that for now. Let's get to the supply list and what we're going to do to make this painting happen. Now, you know my saying, you don't need to break the bank to learn how to paint. I'm just using very simple supplies from the dollar store to make this happen. So this is actually on a 12 by 16 canvas, but you can see it can really be done on any size canvas. You just have to either make it bigger or smaller. It's all good. My simple supplies for paint today, I have some white. Here, I have some white, some turquoise, some black, and some red. And then I have like a darker blue. This one's called Copenhagen blue. There's cobalt blue, there's sapphire blue. There's a bunch of blues that relatively in this vein of color. And I'm not sure why, but I see it. I have a little orange in this painting here too. Now I'm only going to use 2 brushes for this painting. I have my big fat Fatty McFadderson flathead brush. This is a 3/4 inch brush, but 1 inch, 2 inches would even be okay. But I like the 3/4 style. I feel like it's a really good size to either fill up lots of space or to fill in little spaces. It's got a lot of variety. And then I have my nice long liner brush that I'm going to do some outlining with. Now, obviously, you're going to have your own brushes at home, so whatever you love using, you just use that, and it'll be good. So, besides that, I have a paper plate for my paints. I've got a napkin and an old red Solo cup of water. So whatever those vessels are that you use, that's perfect. And just remember, guys, I'm always available for private parties and public parties and all sorts of great parties. I love teaching painting. So if you have a team or a group or a family, or if you're all scattered all throughout North America or the world, painting, inviting me to come paint with you guys on like Zoom or Google or whatever, wherever we may meet, is a great way to connect, still be together, and still like do a really fun activity together. So it's a great team building exercise. It's a great way to just connect and have something that we all have in common. Even if we're different people, we can always connect through painting. So with that said, please feel free to go check out my website, juliespaintparty.com, and you can get all the information you need there. So let's get this started. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. Oh, no more. Let's get our background colors on. So here, I'm just gonna pop this painting in and out at random. And our background colors for this painting are gonna be some turquoise and some white and some of the dark blue. Now I'm gonna mix a little bit of the dark blue with some black to make this navy blue down here. If you have a navy blue paint, you're more than welcome to use it, but it might not even be dark enough. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of black on my palette right now. And then when I need my red and orange, I'm gonna flop it on there. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just flap my brush all over the background of the canvas using a whole bunch of turquoise and white to start. Now I love just adding a little water to my brush before I get started, and I'm just gonna flap back and forth. I'm gonna flap it to the east, I flap it to the west, I flap it to all the corners of my canvas, I flap it. So I don't want it to be super thick on the background. We're gonna want it to dry pretty quick, so a little bit of water really helps to kind of smooth out your brush strokes. Honestly, I love making noises when I'm painting, and I feel like it's really therapeutic. So, you know, I don't really care if anybody's home or not. If you need to let it out, just let it out. This is our time. This is your time. This is us getting some painting time in, and we can make whatever noises that we want. So, and see how I'm kind of making long brush strokes here. Sorry, my lights are a little bit bright. You know what? I might turn one off actually. Turn it off, turn it off. Move it over. No, that doesn't work, but that's fine. Okay, you know what? I'm always working on this setup, but hopefully it transpires well enough through the screen that you can understand what's going on here. So I'm alternating colors. I take a little white and flap it around, and I take a little turquoise and flap it around. And I want to see both colors all over the place. So whenever I see some empty spots where like the paint didn't get filled in, that's when I grab a little water, I tap it on my palette, and then I go ahead and I fill those little spaces in. The water just like, it fills in those little cracks for us, so it doesn't look so dry. And I also love to make sure that I have, you can see I have a straight turquoise here, I have little white over here, but there's a lot of spots where there's different variations of the two colors that are mixing together, and that's a big deal for me. So it's really important, if you want to see that on your canvas, to see all these different variations of color, it's really important that you don't overmix. So don't go flapping so hard that like it all turns into one brand new color. We want to see all those wispies all over the place. Now, if for some reason say it ends up looking really light, like a really light painting, and it all looks like one light turquoise painting, just grab a little regular turquoise and make a few flappies over top of it. And then vice versa. If you have a really dark turquoise painting, just go ahead and take a little white and flap over top of it. And just to get some of those variations of color in there. Yeah. Yes. All right. Oh, flapped all around. And you can see that, you know, you see all those different kind of colors in there, and it's all good. Now what I'm gonna do before my painting dries, I'm gonna start to bring my blue in. I'm not gonna rinse my brush at all. And I'm gonna start to mix it in from the bottom up. Now it's gonna mix. What I want it to mix with my turquoise and white right now. So I'm not gonna rinse my brush or anything. I'm gonna grab just a little bit of that blue, and I'm gonna start to flap it up from the bottom into the painting. So I'm making like little cross hatches. I X, flap, 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 back, back, back. So it's kind of looks like little X's, or you can rock your brush back and forth, but I'm going diagonal in both ways. So I'm going from the right side down to the left, and I'm also making little flaps from the left side down to the right. And you can see how it's kind of changing up the color down there a little bit. Now it doesn't look super duper blue right now because it's mixing in with all of that turquoise and white down at the bottom, but this is gonna be a great way to create a path. And I like to think of it as like, kind of like little mountains or like little peaks and valleys. I don't wanna fill in the whole bottom with blue. I like to still see a little bit of the, I worked so hard to put this paint on the canvas in the first place, so I'll bring it up in one spot and then still leave a spot open from the background. And then same over here, I'll kind of gently kind of drag my brush up and down and bring some blue up this way. So we have the peak and the valley, and the peak and the valley. And that's kind of what I'm going for right now. Now I don't want to overdo it because I do need this to dry. All right, and that's gonna be a little, it's gonna take a few minutes, and it might feel a little difficult because it's hard, once you like get the flow going, it's hard to let things dry. So just a couple little more flappies. I just wanna bring in that little bit of extra blue, mix it in with my background color so it's nice and light. You know, a couple little, you can bring it up into the top area too if you wanna put a couple little, you know, blue pieces up in these corners or anywhere around. This is where your beautiful creativity comes into play. So, you know, you can really make this background look however you'd like. But because we need to let it dry to get those darker tones of blue on there, I'm just going to leave it be for now. Stopping in painting might be like the hardest thing in the whole world. It's really, really hard to stop. So take a breath. Now, if you have a hair dryer or, you know, if you had to go get a drink, just go get it now. And when we come back, we will just add a little extra blue. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. All right, that was a little wild. Anyways, so my painting is now dry. I might have a couple little wet spots, but I went and took my hair dryer and I zinned it for a second, and then now it's dry. So now I can start to add those darker blue elements onto my canvas. Just take a little look-see. So you can see it's pretty light here. Now, you can see the light blue in behind here. And I'm very subtle with it, and you really don't have to put a lot, but we're kind of taking the full version of this blue and we're going to bring it up in those same areas, just a little lower. So you can see here, you can see some of that light blue in the background here and here, and I have just kept my dark blue right in line with it, but you can still see the little bit of the light in the background. Why? Because why would you have put the light blue in the first place if you didn't want to see it? We could have just put dark blue. We could have let it just dry and just put dark blue over top. So we don't want to cover up the work that we already did, but we're going to cover up a little bit of it. All right. So give that brush a rinse, dry it off. And because we're adding paint on top of this paint, I don't really want to add, sorry, I got a little fuzzy on my painting there. I don't want to add a whole lot of water. I'm just going to take a little bit of the dark blue at a time, and I'm going to start down here, and I'm going to start to bring it up. Now, I can tell right away that I had used a different color blue. I think this blue here is what's it called? Copenhagen blue. I think the other blue that I used was probably more of a cobalt, but like I said, either way is all good. Now, I'm still using those same kind of brush strokes. So I'm pulling diagonally and making little crisscrosses. Sometimes they're like little rocking motions. Sometimes I just kind of drag down, and I'm just being really light about it. I'm not overdoing it, and I'm just taking a little bit of paint at a time and adding those darker blues into the forefront here. Oh man, I have so many love songs in my head. It must have been love, but it's over now. What is it? I wanna know what love is. I want you to show me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry guys. I can't help it. I get really excited and I sing random songs that pop into my head at all times. Now I try not to overdo it these days, but it still comes up. So I am just dragging up my own little peaks and valleys with my darker blue. You can see this. It almost looks like little pine trees at the bottom, but you can get a little more sporadic about it. It doesn't have to be these like if you want to fill it in a little, or you know, get a little creative with it and add some extra bluey pieces, please feel free. Yay, okay. Now, because I didn't use a whole lot of paint while I was doing this, I'm just kind of going in and I'm flapping around a little more. I'm moving around any goobers that are on my canvas, so any elevated paint. And the more I move my paint around, the faster it's gonna dry. So by this time now, it's already pretty close to being dry. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna grab a little bit of my blue and a tiny little bit of the black. So when I mean tiny, I do like a little tiny corner of black, and I'm gonna mix it with my blue here just to darken it up a little bit. Just makes like a nice little navy blue. Maybe one more little corner. Now you can test it out on the canvas. If it shows up, that's great. It could even be a little darker. I'm gonna bring a little bit more blue here. Even be a little darker than that. So I always like to just start small. You can always add more. If I were to take a big old scoop of black and mix it with my blue, it's inevitably going to look mostly black. So I just like to test out the waters just a little bit at a time, taking a little corner at a time and bringing it in. And I'm just going to keep this nice and low at the bottom of my painting and make a little bit more of a darker blue landscape. I don't know what to call it. It's just like just a little darker. It just gives it more, honestly, more dimension, more character. You're starting from a little bit of a light blue and it's moving down into like a darker blue. And I feel like it just adds a lot of depth of field into the painting. And there we go. Now we got a little bit of darkness. Now I used up all that, so I'm just gonna leave it be. But you know, you could add a little bit more. And I mean, truly, if you wanted to, you could add even another layer of darkness to it. So if you wanted to just grab a little bit of black and pop that right along the bottom, you could darken it up even more down here. Dang, all right. Whoa, I'm gonna give my brush a rinse. Dang, went crazy. And now that we have this whole bottom area done on our canvas, we can go ahead. I'm gonna grab some red. All right, and give my brush a good rinse. And we're gonna make a little bit of space for our heart balloons up at the top. Now, check this out here. We have all of this blocked off color, okay? And what happens is that my red is gonna come down into like little points, and I'm gonna make sure to have my hearts set in these little areas that kind of go down and around. Now, obviously I have hearts floating up, that doesn't really matter, but just keep it in mind that we're gonna have these areas that kind of come down to a point, and we're gonna flap it up and then have a few little areas like that. So you can really map this out any way you want. If you wanna have some bigger hearts, you could make it a little bigger. You could have this more filled in with like a bigger amount of red, so it's not just at the top. Honestly, any version of however you put the red on the canvas is gonna be, excuse me, fantastic. Now, as I'm looking at this, so like I said, I've never taught this painting before. I'm just kind of looking around and I'm wondering to myself, did I add this blue first and then add the red on top? And I think that might have been the case because I can still see different variations of red, which means that I had a color underneath of it to start. And I'm wondering if that's what I should do. It might be a really cool way to actually map out a little bit of the shape of my balloons. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Before I add the red on there, I'm gonna add a little bit of blue, and I'm just gonna add tiny little strokes to kind of create the shape of my random balloon bouquet here. All right, let's do it. So I'm gonna take a little bit of my blue, still with my big brush. Now, if you have a smaller brush that you want to use, you're more than welcome to do that. And starting in this area, I'm just gonna like make some little drags, and I'm gonna pull down to a point here, and then I'm gonna start to pull up. And I'm not gonna like be super particular about it, but I'm gonna start to create those little spots where my hearts are gonna live. So down here, so I'm gonna have a heart in this area, I'm gonna have a heart in this area. Drag it down here a little bit. And last but not least, we go all the way down to this point here. Then I'm gonna go up and around. So I'm gonna go up here. Very, very, very loosely shaping out where my red paint strokes are going to live, with a little bit of background color. Now, to give a little texture in behind my hearts, I am going to take my brush and just add a few little extra pops of color inside here. All right, that should be good. Now, you can always add more later, but just notice, okay? I know this looks really, really random, but it's just because I'm not caring so much. I'm not caring enough to make anything perfect right now. That's not what we're going for. We're going to drag down a little bit here and then just scribble over. Then we have a little point here. Point here, and point here. Okay, so just take a minute to put some scribbles up here and put a couple little points where your hearts are going to be, and then we can start to add the red on top. Great, 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 great. So I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna grab some red, and I'm gonna start to just fill in just like we did down here. So I'm making really random brush strokes and filling all this space in. And down where there's these little heart points, I'm just gonna make sure I have a little point with it. Then the rest, just gonna go ahead and fill it in. Now, if you wanna add a little bit of water to your brush to thin it out a little bit, if it's really covering a lot of the stuff up, which isn't a bad thing, you can add a few different variations of red just by adding a little drop of water in with it. And I just make sure I have a nice point whenever wherever I want to put that heart, a nice point down at the bottom. See? And we got some spots. You can see some of the blue kind of poking through the background right there. And you definitely don't have to, and kind of shouldn't stay perfectly in the perimeter of that blue outline that I had. It's cool to see some of the blue spots poke through, but like I said, if you really want it there, you can add it later. This area up here is mostly about the red balloons. So don't try and stay in the boundaries. We're just working with that shape, that weird shape that we just made. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Now, if you really want to get fancy with it, you can make a little bit of burgundy as well. So you can take a little bit of red and, like I said before, tiny, tiny, tiny little bits of black and bring it in with your red. Now, because we added the blue in the background, it made kind of like a burgundy in the background here. But if you want to, take it to the next level and add a little black and red in together, you could get nice and creative and add a couple little darker tones in there. Actually, could be even darker than that. I'm being really stingy with my black today, so I'm really going to add it in there now. And maybe just add a couple little spots. So whenever I'm adding, sorry, it's so that those lights are so bright. A really great way to add some texture and dimension into our paintings is whenever there's like a crevice or a crack or any kind of like elbow or armpit, adding a little bit of darkness underneath, just kind of a pseudo shadow. Like it's not really a shadow, but it definitely adds some nice texture and a nice just movement. Nice 3D quality to the painting. So if I have this little armpit here, I can add a little bit of that burgundy in there. To the bottoms of my hearts, just to add like a little shading. Now I don't want to put it everywhere. I don't want it to take over. I want it to still look mostly red. But I'm just saying, like, you can always add little things like that to just add a tiny bit of black to the paint that you're using and create something pretty cool. There we go. Awesome. All right. Now, last but not least, before we put any of our balloons on here, I'm going to just add the tiniest little bit of orange to my palette. Tiny, tiny, tiny. I'm going to give my brush a really good rinse. Really, really good rinse. And I'm going to add a very, very, very small amount of orange into some of these spots. And just like the blue, just like everything else, we can always add more later if it ends up getting eaten or taken over. But just for now, I'm going to add little bits of orange. And it really just offsets the red a little bit, just adds a little extra color in there. Very, very little. Now it's mixing with my burgundy and my red here, so if you want the orange to stay really orange, just give your brush a wipe or a rinse in between because it is mixing with some of these colors. So in some spots I want to see the orange, but I do want to see it mix in a little bit at random. And whenever I'm deciding on extra little highlights and things like that, so if you just take a little lean back, if you really take a look at where the orange placement is on this painting, I don't have it all up in one corner or all down in another. It's kind of evenly distributed. So that orange pop of color really brings your eye up and down and over, and it just catches your eye enough to keep it really interesting. So I'm not putting it in every single little crack that I find. Just a little bit here and there really, really makes the difference in the long run. And like I said, again, probably for like the 80th time today, if you do need to add more, you can always add a little more later. Now let's give this just a few extra minutes to dry. And when we come back, we'll add our black lines and make all sorts of fun little balloons in our cloud of red. So funny thing, I'm getting ready to throw all these black lines on top here, and I'm looking at my red, and my red's really dark. Like, it's not, I'm looking at it on my screen, I'm looking at it here. It doesn't seem very vibrant, and I feel like it should be a little bit more vibrant. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add one more little layer of red to it, just so that it's not so, like, it just looks really dark with all the blues in behind and then all that burgundy that we added on top. So let's see here. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna grab my red and I'm gonna add some brighter red spots right on top. There we go. See how much brighter that red is? Oh yeah, that's way better. I want this painting to look like vibrant and happy, not so dull and dreary. So hopefully these red spots dry a little bit brighter. You see, I'm not covering every single area up. I'm just kind of adding a little bit to make it a little brighter. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this be and I'm gonna dry it again and see how bright it shows up. All right, it might not be like the most vibrant red, but it is nicer now that I did that second coat of paint, and I'm happy that I did it. So if you did it, congrats for like taking the extra time to do it. Sometimes that's really hard to do. Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna add a whole bunch of hearts in here. But the first thing I'm going to start with are all these hearts that go down into those little cracks that we made, all those little points that we made. So I'll start with these, and just notice how loose they are. There's nobody like judging these lines. It's all good. Some have double lines to them if you need to make them a little thicker. They can be really whimsical and random sizes. Honestly, so much potential for the different styles of hearts that you can make on here. And I always love using my long liner brush whenever I'm making thin lines. But I do have a rule that I follow when I'm using my long brush. And honestly, I would follow it even if I was using like a smaller liner brush, because it's very helpful. So what I see often is people will take their brush and they'll put a tiny little bit of paint on the end there, and they're gonna try and make these hearts, which, you know what, that didn't work out too bad. That was actually pretty good. But you can see it's really shaky down here. My bristle kind of separated from itself. It didn't stay intact. The bristles separated because they didn't have any water on it. Just do that a little bit more there. It didn't have any water on it, so it's not really smooth. So for any outlining or black lines, I always grab some water and I add a few drops of water right to the side of my black, and I get my brush nice and filled up so that it's nice and put together. So I have this like little bit of liquidy black here. I get it really nice and full, and I fill up my whole brush. I don't just touch the top, I fill up my whole brush. I give it a little twist to make sure that my bristles are gonna stay nice and put together. And then it's a lot easier for me to make nice smooth lines. So like I said, I'm gonna work within these little points that I made down here. And whether they're close to the point or up a little bit, just trying to aim for that little triangle part down in that center here. So I'm just gonna start right there and bring my brush back. It's just so much smoother. So much smoother. I'm going to do that all over the place. Now, depending on how you want your balloons to look, if you want nice thin lines, I'm just using the very, very tippy tip of my brush, and I'm not pushing very hard at all. Sometimes it can feel a little wobbly when we're trying to be out here, so often I will use my pinky finger. So I use my pinky to anchor my hand, or I'll just put my hand directly on the canvas if it's not too wet, so that when I'm aiming for this one point here, I'm not like trying to figure out how to get there without wiggling my hand. I anchor first, and then that's when I'll aim for that point, and I can feel nice and secure in my brush stroke. And you know, everybody does hearts in a different way. I'm happy to start at the top and go down, but because I know I have a point that I'm aiming for, I start right in that point. Then I don't have to aim and hope that I make it there. I'm already there. And then I can move away from it and bring it down. Now, using a long liner brush can be a little bit tricky, and doing this in one fell swoop can also be tricky. So if you have to like break it up going one way and the other way, whatever you're the most comfortable with is exactly how you should do it, whatever you're comfortable with. Now we have these like hearts that are all down in these little crevices here. You know what, I'm gonna make one here too. I think that's pretty good. And we can start to fill up the rest with balloons that aren't, or with hearts, whatever you want to call them, that are going to overlap each other a little bit. And I don't want to get too crazy because I have to make all the strings moving down, but you know, there's like a kind of a heart top there, so I'm going to have fun just adding in some random and my hearts look very different than the first time I made them, so I'm kind of happy about that. I really like, you know, I first saw this painting probably about 8 or 9 years ago. So it's really fun to like reconnect with old things that you've done or things that you've tried before and want to try again. I wouldn't be the painter that I am today if I didn't have to make the same paintings over and over again. Every time I make a new painting, I learn a little bit more. I learn something new. I learn how far my abilities can go. And it's really a wonderful process. But for sure, a lot of it is from just rinse and repeat, like repeating the same things over and over again, doing the same paintings over and over again. So never feel like you're like, oh, I already did that one. Do it again. See how far you've come. Okay, that's kind of cool. Now I don't know, I'm on the fence. I have like an open space here and a little bit of an open space here. I'm okay with this, but I'm gonna put one more. I'm gonna put a little heart right in this area here. Perfect. Now, like I said, if you want to get a little fun with it, you can, make another line that goes with the hearts. If you want to bulk them up a little bit, make them a little bit more expressive, or, get a little crazy with it. Make the hearts a little bit more dramatic, like the background. I'm not going to do it on all of them, but you can really double tap on a lot of these heart balloons. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. It kind of makes it look a little 3D. All right, so once we have all our hearts on there, the last thing we need to do is add the strings for the balloons, because these are technically balloons flying in the sky. And that rule that I told you that I usually follow with my long liner brush for sure goes with this. So grab some water, add it to the side of your black paint, mix it in, mix a little water and black together. And when I'm making my balloon strings, I'm touching very, 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 very lightly. So I'm getting a nice little point on the end of my brush. My brush is nice and filled up with paint. It's got the whole bristles full. And I'm going to start at the top. Shh. Oh, I missed. Shh. And I'm touching so lightly that I missed. Okay. So I'm just really, really lightly. If you need to anchor first to get to that point, that's totally cool. And we're just kind of making some little wiggles down, all the way down into the bottom of our canvas. I like them to crisscross a little bit. I don't want it to just be all, they're all floating together. All the strings always end up all mishmashed anyways. Making sure my brush is nice and filled up, so I can just grab the tip and make sure you shoosh. Shooshing helps. Oh. Now, friends, if you do want to explore more paintings, if you have more time to paint and you want to, have more subject matters to follow along to without any commercials from YouTube, or, with things that you want to pick that you want to do, you can always check out my Julie's Paint Party virtual membership hub. And I have well over 250 painting tutorials in there that you can choose from. And they're all categorized into seasons and subjects and levels. So I have beginner levels and mid-level, all sorts of stuff. I have a wonderful section for kids, my Project Monster Kids Hub. That's connected to my membership as well, or to the virtual hub. And it's just a wonderful place that you can always go to find new things, to find and to follow along. You can pause and go as much as you please without getting interrupted by commercials. All right, nice. Look at all these balloons. Hooray. Now, I covered up quite a bit of my orange from that second coat of red that I did. And the orange is kind of cool to add some little highlights into the balloons too. So you can use your big brush, or you can still just grab your liner brush and add a few little orangey marks. Some of the tops are around some of the hearts on your painting. And it just really adds some fun little highlights. Wherever you want. And like I said, when you're looking at where your orange is placed, you want the orange to kind of draw your eye around. So if I started seeing the orange here, I kind of move up and over. I kind of follow it down. I'm going to put a last little bit of orange over in this nice little corner over here. Beauty. Now you can do the same with the blue too. So if you kind of covered up all of the blue paint on your canvas, like the blue paint that was behind our balloons, you can always grab a little extra blue and, you know, bring it out from behind. So it wasn't all for nothing. But the most important part is when you feel like you've completed the process and you got through this whole dang painting. Nice work, honestly. You should be incredibly proud of just getting through it. It's a big deal, so bravo, my friend. And last but not least, if you did get all the way through, just grab your paintbrush, and I like to put my little signature on it to make sure everybody knows that I'm the one who did it. Now, lastly, if you want to add like a few extra, like this painting is expressive and wonderful. You can add so much to it if you want to, but sometimes like, I like to call it like love pollen or like little magical pieces falling through the sky. Take any bit, grab your, the back end of your paintbrush handle and add a few little pops of color around. Maybe it's kind of like stars. Maybe it's just like a little bit of magic sprinkled all through the painting. I got some orange and a little white, and maybe I'll even grab a little bit of blue too. You know what? Maybe I'll even grab a little bit of red. Why not? Pop a couple little red pieces of magic in the sky. And voila, c'est beau, and you are finished. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, friend. I'm always insanely grateful to hang out with my friends and paint. It's the joy of my life. So I hope to see you again. Make sure to go over to the Julie's Paint Party public Facebook group and post your painting in our group so that everybody can rant and rave about how awesome you are. All right? I'll see you soon. Bye.